Hey ghouls, this is Gabby.
This is Ricky.
That's Justin.
Welcome to our GrimCast.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of our GrimCast. Today we will be talking about Dorothea Dix Hospital. So to start off with, who was Dorothea and why was she so important? She was a mental health advocate that pioneered for the reform of mental health facilities, as well as prisons. She came to North Carolina in 1848 and petitioned the General Assembly for funds to build a proper mental health facility after touring the state and seeing all the conditions that patients were being kept in, which at the time was housed in prisons because there was no proper facility to promote their wellness. She was denied more than one time the funds for this because the government at the time did not want to allocate that much money for something that they considered to be a humanitarian issue. So this was a long process. So she stayed in a hotel here in Raleigh, North Carolina, and ended up befriending as well as caring for the wife of a Mr. James Dobbins, who at the time was the leading Democrat in the House of Commons. During this time, Mrs. Dobbins unfortunately passed away, and it was said that her dying wish was that her husband supported Dorothea in her bill and her mission to advance mental health care of the time. So Mr. Dobbins went back to the house and made a heartwarming speech that allegedly brought the house to tears, begging for the reconsideration of Dorothea's bill. And it finally did pass after its third reading in January of 1849.
So shortly after this bill had passed in 1849 is when construction began. The location was chosen because of the availability of clean spring water, as well as it was away from the city. It was free of noise and smoke and anything, that's within a city. So it was kind of a perfect plot of land for this type of medical facility. So although construction began in 1849, the hospital did not accept its first patient until February of 1856. The first superintendent and the physician of this hospital was Dr. Edmund Shredwick of Hillsborough, and the first patient that was accepted was at the time diagnosed with suicidal mania. The original hospital was set up with two wings that accommodated up to 274 patients. A second building was constructed that included a kitchen, a bakery, and staff apartments. This building was one of the first public buildings in Raleigh to have steam heating as well as gas lighting. So over the course of the years, it expanded many times, and it had became to be over 282 buildings, 2,354 acres, plus an additional 13 acres of farmland. In 1974, it housed over 2,756 patients. And from 1970s to the early 2000s, it had declined to be 120 buildings, 425 acres, and accommodated only 682 patients. It was named Dix Hill in honor of Dorothea's grandfather, Dr. Elijah Dix. At the time, she refused for it to be named after her and wanted to give the honor of having the hospital named after her grandfather. But on the 100th year anniversary, the General Assembly voted to have the hospital name changed to honor Dorothea. So it became Dorothea Dix in 1956.
So this property, it was self-sufficient, has its own water plant, has its own entertainment, has its own electricity. They also have raised livestock, and they grew their own crops for food. Patients here were held at certain levels. There were some of these patients that had like day passes where they were able to leave the property for the day, but then they also had criminally insane patients here also. The main practices at this facility was the insulin shock therapy, the electric shock therapy, and the ice bath therapy, which all today seem pretty cruel, but back then, it was pretty much advanced for this time. In our research, we have not seen that they've done any lobotomies here, which is very surprising since, this is a time where, all these facilities started using lobotomies thinking it was going to work. And pharmaceutical psychiatric medicine was not available until the 1950s. So in 2012, they shut this hospital down due to the state funding, the decay of the buildings, and also the cost of the upkeep that they were going to have to do to get these buildings back to normal. And the state said that these patients will be better served at facilities in their community, which yet we haven't seen that yet, just in the past 12 years. And the park was created to maintain a peaceful place after its closure to continue the legacy of promoting mental health.
Okay, so in closure, we really wanted to touch on the topic of the cemetery that's associated with Dorothea Dix. Now, not only were patients interred at this cemetery, but there's also remains of Confederate soldiers, Union soldiers, the remains of enslaved individuals that were associated with what the property was before Dix Hospital obtained it. Native American remains are also on the property. So it is a 3-acre space that is said to have 900 plus graves in this area. It fell into disrepair due to neglect over time, the erosion, and there was a landfill that it was established very close to the cemetery, and we believed even part of it may have been used for a driveway or some kind of transportation. So after its closure in 1972, the hospital administration came together to bring this area back up to what it should have been, like a memorial to those that are interred there. So they fenced it, planted some trees, cleaned it up, and left it as it was, with everybody still just making the plot for these unmarked individuals. But in 1991, a local group of volunteers came together with the hospital to identify 750 of these patients and mark where they are buried at in this area. So there are markers about the size of a brick, which you will see in some later footage, that has their name and the date of their death. Since then, it is believed about an additional 50 patients have been identified. Now, we don't know if they also have markers at this point, but they have been identified as far as we know. Now, we did visit this location, so we do have some footage of what the cemetery looks like today that we would like you to see. We are here at Dix Hospital, formerly Dix Hospital, now it's Dix Park. We are here in the cemetery, or what is left of it anyways. There are some crows. There are some headstones, as you can see, but most of them are flat brick-like markers of the patients that were here with their names and date of death. But as you can see, they have not been maintained that well, and so a lot of them are hard to find and hard to locate, and the ones that you can locate are covered in such a way, I don't know if you can really tell, but this is a grave marker. completely covered and mowed over. Let's see. Locklear. Lula Locklear. So they're really, I don't know how good of a shot that was, but they are super overgrown here. But otherwise, it is a beautiful area. It's just not maintained the way that you would think it would be maintained.
Okay, so as you can see in the footage, the earth has taken over a lot of these markers, unfortunately, with wear and tear, and it's been about 30 plus years since any, I guess, proper updating has been done to the cemetery. So some of the markers have been taken over by the earth. So it would be nice to see somebody come in there and kind of bring everything back to life and make sure everybody's marker is accounted for. So that would be nice to see, and to have a proper memorial for those that are interred there and these patients, to honor what they had been through in Dorothea's mission for mental health. I believe that's all we have for you for this episode. We hope that you'll follow along with us, as we do have some exciting things coming up. As far as the history of some locations and some pretty cool paranormal experiences. But that's it. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.